City fan, get ready, because what is happening behind the scenes at Manchester City right now says a lot about the present, and above all, about the future of the club. While many people out there only see what happens in the matches, the truth is that there is a major restructuring being drawn up. Frank conversations between the manager and the players, refereeing controversies that could weigh heavily in the title race, a serious injury to an important midfield figure, and, to top it all off, an academy goalscorer who is starting to be treated as the Haaland of the house. Today, you are going to understand how all of this connects. Let's start by talking about a youngster who is already attracting attention inside the Football City complex. Vitor Reis, a center-back of just 19, decided to open his heart and reveal the content of the conversations he had with the manager before being loaned to Girona for the 2025-26 season. And what he said reveals a lot about how the club thinks about its new generation of talents and how there is no improvisation when it comes to planning the career of a promising player. Reis arrived at the Etihad in January, precisely at one of the most complicated moments of the club's current era. The defense was completely patched up, the team was suffering with a heavy run of injuries, and the board had to act quickly to prevent the season from completely collapsing. It was in this context that he, alongside Kusanov, landed in Manchester to be part of an emergency rebuild of the defensive system. As usually happens with most youngsters who arrive in the middle of the season, especially in such a competitive squad, he was not thrown to the lions straight away. Instead of going straight into every match, he spent months absorbing the manager's famous style of play, training daily with the first team, getting used to the training rhythm, the intensity of English football, and the natural pressure of wearing the shirt of a team that fights for every possible trophy. He even got a few minutes on the pitch in less decisive matches, including appearances at the FIFA Club World Cup, which already shows an enormous level of trust from the coaching staff for someone so young. But internally, it was always clear that the club would need a bigger plan for him from the following season onwards, something thought out calmly, focused on his medium and long-term development, and not just to plug gaps in an emergency situation. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, the club was also going through changes off the pitch. With Hugo Vanna taking over as sporting director in the summer, a strong overhaul of the squad began. Important figures who had little playing time were put on the list of possible loans or transfers, with the aim of refreshing the group and, at the same time, ensuring that high-level players had room to play with a view to the 2026 World Cup. Within that package, even big names such as Jack Grealish and Akanji left the club temporarily to seek a leading role at other teams, and it was precisely this restructuring that opened the door for Vitor Reis's loan to Girona, one of the City Football Group clubs, which offers an ideal environment for youngsters who need to take the next step, playing at a high level but under slightly less pressure than in the elite of English football. What nobody knew until then is that, according to Reis himself, the initial idea was for him to stay in Manchester. The original plan was to keep training, fighting for minutes and trying to earn his place in the first-team squad. Everything changed after a direct, face-to-face conversation with the manager. And it was in that conversation that it became clear just how much the club works with honesty and a long-term vision when it comes to young players. Reis said that the manager did not waffle, did not promise anything he could not deliver, and was completely transparent about the situation. With so many experienced center-backs ahead of him in the pecking order, the outlook for the season was a very few minutes on the pitch. The question then stopped being, is he good or not, and became, where can he develop faster? The answer, according to the manager himself, was obvious: Girona. The young defender revealed that this honesty made all the difference in his decision. Instead of insisting on staying on the bench just for the status of being at a European giant, he understood that the best way to serve the club in the future was to grow now by playing regularly. At Girona, he would have the chance to face big teams in La Liga, make mistakes, learn, correct them, and come back better prepared to fight for his place in England. In these statements, he also made a point of saying how welcome he felt from the very first day in Manchester. Both teammates and the coaching staff helped him adapt to his new reality, and the praise he received straight away from the manager had a very strong impact. The boss had already praised his leadership back in his Palmeiras days, and hearing that face-to-face from one of the most respected coaches in the world is the kind of thing that leaves a mark on any player's career. At the same time as it plans Race's future, the club also needs to resolve another delicate situation, the case of Claudio, who is on loan at Bayer Leverkusen. With the clash between City and Leverkusen set for the Champions League, there is a real possibility that the loan will be cut short earlier than planned, precisely to avoid contractual and strategic conflicts. Discussions over what to do with the player are likely to intensify in the coming days. This type of move shows how nothing is simple when managing a big squad. It is not just about signing or loaning players, but about understanding each player's moment, the financial implications, competition regulations, and, of course, the human side. Claudio is living through a pressured moment in Germany, Vitor Reis is seeking maturity in Spain, and the club is trying to balance all of this without losing focus on the competitions in which it is involved. Now I want you, City fan, to think with me. To what extent can this loan to Girona be a turning point in Vitor Reis's career at the club? Do you believe he will come back stronger and ready to be a starter in the future? Or do you think this could be the first step in a path away from Manchester? It is worth already keeping your opinion in mind because his name is likely to be talked about a lot in the coming years. Leaving the behind the scenes a little and going on to the pitch, we have another story that really hit the fans emotionally. The controversial refereeing in the 2-1 defeat to Newcastle, in which the winning goal, scored by Harvey Barnes, caused huge anger within the squad, especially in one of the team's defensive leaders, Ruben Dias. And to be honest, when we calmly look at the context of the match, it is easy to understand why he was so outraged. The match itself was a faithful reflection of everything that has been happening this season. The team created, pressed, got into dangerous areas, but wasted chances. Newcastle, in turn, took a more clinical approach, making better use of the opportunities they had. The result was a tense, balanced game in which any detail could decide the scoreline. And unfortunately for City, that detail ended up being an extremely contentious refereeing decision. The first half ended goalless, but not without drama. City had the ball, camped in the attacking half, made the opposing goalkeeper work, but lacked that extra touch of quality in the final action. At the other end, Newcastle were dangerous when they managed to break away at speed, and at times even felt they deserved to go into the break ahead. It was the kind of match that gave the feeling that the first goal would completely change the story of the game. That feeling was confirmed just after the interval, in a crazy 6-minute spell that turned everything upside down. First, Barnes appeared to open the scoring for Eddie Howe's side. Shortly afterwards, in a quick response, Ruben Dias leveled the match, reigniting the City fans' hopes. But the joy was short-lived. Barnes found the net again, scoring his second and putting Newcastle back in front, this time for good. And it is precisely in this second goal that the controversy explodes. In an interview after the match, Ruben Dias made it clear that he could not accept the decision to allow the goal to stand, especially after watching the footage back. In his view, the contact on Donnarumma in the box went far beyond a normal tussle at a corner. The defender said the forward simply shoved the goalkeeper out of the play, taking him out of the contest for the ball in a clear manner. The point that most infuriates the center-back is not even just the incident itself, but the lack of consistency in applying the laws. He vented, saying it feels like the interpretation changes every week. On some match days, a much lighter touch is already considered a foul on the keeper. On others, far stronger pushes are ignored. This, according to him, leaves players and fans completely confused, not knowing what is or is not allowed inside the box. Dias explained that, in real time, on the pitch, he did not even see the shove so clearly, because everything happens very quickly there in the 6-yard box. But as soon as he saw the replay, the feeling of injustice took over. In the defender's opinion, Donnarumma was positioned exactly where he should have been to challenge for the ball and was moved illegally, which, in an ideal scenario, should have led to the goal being ruled out. And if this type of play is now going to be considered normal, then everyone needs to be informed, so there is consistency in future matches. Even annoyed with the refereeing, the center-back did not hide behind it to justify the result. He acknowledged that Newcastle were more efficient and that the team once again paid a high price for the chances missed in the first half. A draw might even have been acceptable for what both teams produced, but the truth is that City were not dominant enough to complain only about the referee. And, in such a fierce title race, every little detail like that ends up having an impact on the table. This defeat has a direct consequence. It opens up the possibility for Arsenal to pull further away at the top, potentially going 6 points clear if they win the North London derby. In such a competitive league, that kind of gap is not impossible to overturn, but it forces City to reach an almost absolute level of perfection from now on. And that is where questionable refereeing decisions become even harder to swallow. Now I will pass the ball to you, City fan. In your view, did Ruben Dias go too far with his criticism, or is he absolutely right? In your opinion, should that second Barnes goal have been disallowed for a foul on Donnarumma, or did the referee get it right by letting play continue? These doubts do not only stay in the players' minds, but also in those of the supporters who follow every moment with their hearts in their mouth. I am going to bring this first part of the script to a close here, right at the point where the pressure on the pitch meets the decisions being made behind the scenes. In the next part, we still need to talk about the surgery undergone by an important midfield figure, the incredible form Haaland is in with Norway, and the young academy forward, who is already starting to be treated as the Haaland of the house. When a big club goes through a turbulent spell, the debate almost always gets stuck on the result of the last match, the penalty that wasn't given, the marginal offside, or the individual mistake that turns into a meme on social media. But if we calmly look at what is happening with Manchester City, it becomes clear that there is something much deeper at stake. While the team tries to readjust on the pitch, major decisions are being made off it, and one of them involves directly the heart of the midfield, the situation of Mateo Kovacic. In the most recent press conference, the manager was open in confirming what many had already suspected. Kovacic has had to undergo yet another surgery to try once and for all to fix a problem that had been bothering him for quite some time. It was not a sudden injury, one of those that happens in a single isolated moment. It was something that built up, persisted, came back every time it seemed sorted, until it reached a point where the only possible solution was the surgeon's knife. The discomfort, as explained, has affected the foot and ankle area since the beginning of last summer in Europe. Over the months, the club tried everything: conservative treatments, rest periods, load management, pain control. At certain points, it looked as if he was finally free of the problem, but all it took was a more intense run of games for the pain to reappear. And a player who lives on the physical limit, as is the case for anyone performing at the highest level in Europe, cannot deliver 100% when he feels that something down there is not right. After several consultations, scans, and reassessments, the conclusion was that it could not be postponed any longer. The new surgical procedure ended up being similar to the one he had already undergone at the start of the year. The difference this time was that the doctors detected a new calcification in the same area, which required another operation to clean the spot, relieve the pressure, and try to give the player back the freedom of movement he needs to perform at his best level. Since arriving at the club from Chelsea in 2023, Kovacic has lived through ups and downs precisely because of these physical limitations. When he was in good condition, he showed that trademark composure with the ball at his feet, vision of play, the ability to break lines with passes and short carries. But between one good spell and another, there was always a period of absence, a match in which he started on the bench not because of a tactical choice, but because his body was not responding well. In the press conference, the manager made a point of highlighting the effort Kovacic had been making to keep competing. He said that he trained and played, many times in pain, trying to push the limit a bit further. In some recent matches, he still went on to the pitch even knowing he was not at 100%. But as time went by, this attempt to soldier on began to exact too high a price. There came a point when, with every sprint or sharper turn, the expression of discomfort became impossible to hide. Of course, minor niggles are part of the reality of any experienced footballer. In the manager's words, it is normal for a player of Kovacic's age to carry small marks from an intense career. The real issue is when that discomfort stops being just a detail and starts to affect decision-making, confidence in the leg, the explosiveness in the first step. At that stage, persisting only with conservative treatment is no longer bravery. It becomes stubbornness. The surgery, as harsh as it may seem at first, becomes almost an act of protection for the rest of the player's career. The problem is that this long absence comes at a moment when the midfield is already under pressure from structural changes. With the squad being reshaped, thinking not only about the current season but also the cycle leading up to the 2026 World Cup, every piece that leaves the scene creates a domino effect. Without Kovacic, the rotation gets shorter. Some players end up playing more minutes than planned, and the board inevitably has to look at the transfer market more closely. It is no coincidence that there is already talk behind the scenes about the possibility of signing reinforcements for the area in the next transfer window. It does not simply mean replacing Kovacic, especially as his profile is quite specific, but it is clear that, if the projected return stretches into the start of the new year, the club cannot count on him as if he were fully fit. It needs to be prepared with plan A, B, and C, so as not to reach March or April with an exhausted squad right in the decisive phase of the Champions League and the Premier League. On the other hand, the absolute priority within the medical department and coaching staff is to ensure that this time the recovery is complete. No unnecessary acceleration, no rushing him back just because of the demands of the calendar. The idea is to send Kovacic back onto the pitch only when he is truly ready, able to play without that constant shadow of pain. If that means waiting a few more months, so be it. It is better to lose a few games now than to compromise the rest of the player's career. There is also another important detail. The Croatian situation does not only affect the club, but also the Croatian national team. With the World Cup on the horizon, any physical problem involving key players carries extra weight. The goal is for him to be able to return in time to finish the season well for City and also play the international competition in good shape. But again, everything will depend on how his body responds after the operation. City fan, I want to know how you see this. Do you think the club should go all out in the next window to bring in a new midfielder to cover for his absence? Or do you trust that the current squad can cope until Kovacic is back? And more, do you believe that, fully recovered, he can still be a key piece in this process of renewing the midfield? While it manages this delicate situation in the central area, the club looks ahead and finds a massive reason for optimism up front. And here, there is no way of avoiding a name that has already become synonymous with goals in Manchester and in Norway, Erling Haaland. What he is doing this season is so absurd that in many moments we run the risk of treating it as something normal. But it is not normal, and it is worth stopping to look at the numbers and the context. In the 2025-26 season, Haaland has already gone past 16 appearances for the club and has scored 19 goals, as well as providing 1 assist. In the Premier League alone, he has 14 goals in just 12 matches, failing to score in only a handful of games. It is as if he has programmed his own standard for the word consistency. If he goes one match without finding the net, it feels like something is wrong, when in reality, what is strange is someone being able to deliver this volume of goals in such a short time. And it is not just City surfing this wave of goals. The Norwegian national team are also reaping the rewards of having a center forward in a state of grace. Haaland is already the top scorer in the country's history by a distance, with 55 goals in 48 matches. That gap to the other names on the list shows how far ahead he is, even while still being relatively young. It is not just a good spell, it is a generational impact. During the November international break, he made sure to increase that tally even more. First came 2 goals against Estonia in a 4-1 win that kept Norway's hopes of reaching the World Cup alive. Then came a theoretically much tougher test against Italy. What could have been a tight battle, goal for goal, he turned into his own personal show with 2 goals in the space of a minute. one with an acrobatic finish, showing positional awareness far above the average, and another with a short touch, almost a pass into the net, past his club teammate Donnarumma, sealing yet another 4-1. For City fans, seeing the number 9 at this level of confidence on the eve of the end-of-year marathon is practically an early present. Christmas, New Year, fixtures piled up, decisive games in a short space of time, and you have a center forward who not only scores but intimidates opposition defenses just by being on the pitch. That completely changes the way rivals approach the match. Center backs drop a few yards deeper. Fullbacks are afraid to push on. Holding midfielders sit closer to the box. All of that opens up space for the rest of the team to play. But the story does not end with Haaland. One question is always hovering over the minds of supporters, the board, and the coaching staff. Who will be the next one? If one day he needs to be rested for several games in a row, if an injury appears, or even thinking further ahead, is there anyone within the club capable of taking on, even partially, this role of reference in attack? That is where a gem who is starting to attract attention in the academy comes in. Ron Heskey, son of former England international striker Emile Heskey. At 17, the young forward has been catching the eye of everyone following City's academy. In last season's Under-18 Premier League, he scored 18 goals and provided 7 assists in 19 matches. Those are the numbers of someone who not only finishes well, but also plays an active part in build-up, moves, links play, creates space, and delivers key passes. He is not your typical static center forward. He is a goal scorer with a collective understanding of the game. His potential has not gone unnoticed. The manager has already decided to give him a first taste of senior football, handing the youngster his debut for the first team in a match in the English League Cup, the famous Carabao Cup, at the start of this season. It is not common to see someone so young get this sort of opportunity in such a competitive squad, which says a lot about how much the club believes in his future. And it does not stop there. Wearing the England Under-17 shirt at the World Cup in that age group, Ron Heskey has been one of the standout performers. He already has 4 goals and 3 assists, as well as displays in which he is a constant threat to opposition defenses. He does not disappear from the game. He does not hide in moments of pressure. On the contrary, he shows up, asks for the ball, takes risks, plays with his back to goal, and attacks space intelligently. When we put all of this together, Haaland tearing defenses apart for club and country, and a young academy striker producing impressive numbers both domestically and internationally, it becomes very clear why so many people in Manchester are saying the club may have a homegrown Haaland being polished. Of course, any direct comparison is still premature and even unfair on the lad, but the fact that this analogy exists already shows the level of expectation surrounding his name. For the club, this scenario is almost ideal. On one side, one of the best strikers in the world at his physical and technical peak. On the other, a developing talent who can learn daily by watching, training with, and gradually sharing minutes with this penalty box monster. For the fan, it is the kind of news that fires the imagination. You can picture a future in which, a few years from now, City still have an elite finisher wearing the number 9 shirt, whoever that may be. My friend, City supporter, now it is your turn to think big. Do you believe Ron Heskey has what it takes to become, in the medium term, Haaland's ideal backup, perhaps even his natural successor down the line? Or do you think the road is still long and the club should keep looking for ready-made options in the market? Notice how everything connects. The club's honesty in planning Vitor Rice's career, Ruben Dias's anger at refereeing that directly affects the title race, Kovacic's absence, reshaping the midfield, Haaland going through an absurd purple patch, and a youngster from the academy emerging as a possible heir to this goal-scoring mentality. It is as if City were living, at the same time, 3 different timelines. The immediate present, which demands results, the short term, which requires adjustments, and the future, which is being carefully drawn. So that's it, City fan. If you enjoyed getting fully up to date with everything that is happening behind the scenes and on the pitch, Do not leave this video without dropping your like, because that helps a lot to strengthen our work. Take the opportunity as well to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you do not miss any important updates about Manchester City, the behind-the-scenes stories, the transfer market, and the future of our talents. Your participation is what keeps this content alive, so hit the like button, subscribe, and leave a comment down below telling us what you made of all this.